How's it going? Welcome to a brand new edition of the Build series here in New York City. My name is Kevin Kenny, and we have a very special guest today. Vance Joy will be joining us in just a few moments. Now, Vance first burst onto the music scene with his debut album in 2014 and accomplished more with that debut album than many artists strive to achieve in their entire careers. He's back now with his sophomore effort, Nation of Two, which is already off to a huge start around the world. 60 million streams in just 2 weeks after its release. Joining us now live in the Build studio, Mr. Vance Joy.
Hey. Hey, guys. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. How's it going, man?
It's going good. Yeah, I've just been doing a lot of running around, promoting my new album, which it feels good to have out in the world finally, and just going for it. And what am I saying? Everything's good, and yeah, I'm proud of these songs. So yeah, life is good, and I'm about to start touring, heading to London later today, and then starting some touring, and basically the whole year of touring.
It's a year ahead, man.
Yeah.
I gotta ask though, how do you stay so even-keeled and focused throughout this whole thing? Because I saw you here in New York maybe 3 weeks ago, and that was before the record was out. And you know, you were confident in the music, you were excited for the record to be out. I just saw you backstage before we did this thing, and you're like the same guy, but yet you had this hit record out. You got 60 million streams around the world. Not only just do the fans love it with the streams, the critics are going crazy about it. Every major publication is praising your work.
That's good.
And you're like the same dude backstage. You're just like, yeah, things are good, you know, good time.
Well,
You like it?
No, it's funny because when you say that, like, I never really look at reviews or anything. I find it can be a bit like you get a bunch of really positive ones, but you really focus on the one negative one. So my dad sent me a message. It was like in the middle of the night, and I like had jet lag, and I like look at my phone, and Dad's like, really good reviews of the album, very proud. And I'm like, thanks, Dad. And I'm like, maybe I should check out some reviews. And then I like looked at some reviews, and there was like some really nice ones. And then I just like scrolled down, and there's like some guys just like wailing on it. I'm like, okay,
Done.
didn't need to see
Done.
that. Didn't need to see that. It's like
Exactly.
pitch black at night, just like, yeah.
Thinking about that guy.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, you know, we talked before, like I said, a couple weeks ago about the record, but it was really brief. You know, you were performing, it was in between songs and stuff like that. And I'm glad that we can dig deeper into it here on Build and have a longer talk and kind of geek out on the record a little bit, because there's so much to geek out on. And something that struck me upon listening to it, and I'm sure I'm not the only person that noticed this, was the vocal recording on this song. And what struck me about it is I was lucky enough, and I'm gonna make every fan here jealous, but I got to watch you perform from like a couple feet away, and it was mind-blowing. I mean, that was like one of the first things I said. It was like, dude, those vocals are insane. And you captured that. You captured that magic of being in an intimate setting with Vance Joy on this record. And I'm just curious, did you do anything different in the recording process of the vocals to achieve that?
Yeah, thank you. I think that is the goal. And I think in the first albums, it was still the goal, like in terms of creating like an intimate vibe and having like the voice right in your ear and it being personal and up close. And then I guess the rest of the production, lucky I have a great co-producer, Edwin, who I went to high school with, but he's my percussionist, and he lays a really lovely bed of instruments and acoustic instruments, and then I sing over the top. And I think your voice gets a little bit. You explore over time of singing a lot. You kind of discover what your voice is capable of and ways to use your voice. And I think what I learned from the first album is there's no point leaving anything in the tank. Like when you're doing that vocal performance for the album, you may as well like bust yourself, like, and sing it and put your whole heart into it and even not strain, but just like it's not worth like being like, oh, I better conserve my voice because I have to like do this tomorrow, whatever it is, because it's like that is the permanent record, and so you want that song, and it's hard to capture that emotion that you had when you first wrote the song, because when you write a song, you're like, oh, if you recorded it right there, especially when you record a demo, when you've just written it, that vocal has some weird character to it, which is like more emotional, more urgent, and it can be hard, but you have to try and get back into that headspace to deliver that vocal, so it has that urgency.
Yeah. It's like, you know, there's a rawness to it while being, you know, a fully produced record, which is rare, and it's just something I really enjoyed about it.
Great.
Another thing that I love is the lyrics, and I've always loved your lyrics. You write great lyrics. And a lyric I got to ask you about, because I almost want to frame this and put this on my desk as just like a daily reminder for inspiration, and it comes from the first song on the record, Call Me If You Need Me, and you say that you can't get struck by lightning unless you're standing in the rain. And I may have paraphrased there a little bit.
No, that's about it, yeah.
But where does that come from? That's brilliant.
Oh, thanks. Well, I can't take too much credit for it. I think one of my good friends, her mum, her saying was, and she said that my friend was telling me that it was advice that her mum gave her, and she said that her mum says, you always got to go to the dance. Like, you don't know what's going to happen, so go to the dance, show up, and like the dance is in like, I guess like the idea of the dance, whatever that is, like show up that day to whatever opportunity it is, go to a party and, you know, you don't know who you'll meet, you don't know what will happen, show up to a job opportunity, whatever it is. And so I like that, I feel like that works a lot, like in life, like that idea of like just showing up and if you put yourself in the right position, then magic can happen. So I think with songwriting, you can say yes to an opportunity to work with someone that you have no idea who they are really. You might know that they have a couple of songs that you like, and you just walk in and you do a session with them, and it could go terribly, but it could also be like magic, and so the lightning could strike that day when you put yourself in that position.
Yeah. Something else you were able to accomplish on this record is, you know, I'm listening to it on my headphones, you know, when it came out, and it sounds like you're speaking directly to me. Like I'm the you in all of these songs, and I'm sure you didn't write this record for me. So how do you, when you approach songwriting, you approach actually the vocal performance of these songs, is that something you think about, you know, wanting to make the experience as intimate as possible for the listener?
I think so. I love that. That's a great compliment. I think that when I listen to songs, and I guess everyone loves that feeling of feeling a connection with the person singing or a connection with their story, and there's like, it's nice to have that intimate feeling between you and the person singing. And yeah, I like songs. I think everyone likes to have a feeling as well of like the intimacy. I think everyone loves that feeling of discovering something, and I know that, you know, you might not feel like you've discovered it or whatever it is, but I love that feeling of like, oh, you listen to a whole album and then there's like, you know, you listen to like track 8 or whatever it is, and you're like, oh, this song is like, this is my song, and this is, I just like that when I hear from people that they have favorite songs, I like that idea of them feeling like that song speaks directly to them, and yeah.
And then it becomes their song.
Yeah.
Which is really nice. You wrote some of these songs, I understand, with Dan Wilson. Is that true?
Yes.
I'm so upset that I didn't know that the first time we talked, because I'm like one of the biggest Dan Wilson fans. I was a huge Semisonic fan. Did you ever listen to them growing up?
I did. I wasn't aware even what they were called, but I knew the music.
Yeah. I mean, from Closing Time, and then obviously his work as like, you know, with Adele and stuff. What attracted you to him, though, specifically as somebody to collaborate with?
So that was Dan Wilson. He was in a band called Semisonic. He wrote that song Closing Time. Closing time.
Which you need to cover, by the way.
Yeah.
I was listening to that. I was like, dude, I could hear Vance doing this.
Yeah, and he also wrote Someone Like You with Adele, and Not Ready to Make Nice, which I love that song.
Dixie Chicks,
yeah.
Classic.
So, no, but so he's super talented. But when I went into that session, it was just my contact at my publishing company said, oh, do you want to work with this guy, Dan Wilson? And I looked on his discography, and he had a song, he had all those songs, and I was like, oh, geez, I'm nervous.
I know a lot of these.
Yeah, I'm like, I know that song. That's like the biggest song ever. And then there was a song by an Australian artist called Missy Higgins.
Okay.
And the song is called Everyone's Waiting.
Okay.
And that was a song that I just, like, I'd listened to in Australia like a few years before, and I just fell in love with just randomly, like just hearing it on the radio, and I was like, I love this song so much. And then I was like, whoa, Dan Wilson wrote that song? And you can have all that stuff on paper and still not write a really, you know, a good song with someone. But I found he was super great to work with, and he works out of his home studio. Like his family and his daughters are like next door, and it's just like a nice, comfortable, relaxed family atmosphere. And that's a nice environment to write songs in. There's no pressure. It's like, cool, I'll just chill out. And he'll be like, I'm gonna go for a walk. I'll come back and show me what you got, or whatever it is. Yeah, just sit around and play guitar, and maybe just sit and start thinking about some lyrics, and we'll put our ideas together. So I found him to be just quite an inspiring guy, and someone who I'd like to. He's got a career that everyone would probably want to emulate.
Absolutely, and I always find it's funny you talk about the setting that you guys created some of this music in. I find when artists create music from a real place, a real setting. You talk about a household, you know, probably like a lot of our households with, you know, a family running around. The music becomes real. Like if the starting point is real, the ending point will inevitably be just as real and authentic. So I think that shows through in this work. I know you didn't set out to do a concept album.
Yes.
We talked about that last time, but what happened was, you know, you kind of did make a record about, you know, the ideas of the themes rather of, you know, a relationship, a bond, intimacy, all of these things. So what that tells me, or at least what it makes me think, is that those ideas were always there. You know, those emotions in you were always there, and they were just kind of begging to get out. Maybe you didn't know they were there. So I'm curious now if you are able to look back, the record's still very brand new, but in retrospect, who or what do you think put those feelings there?
That's a really good question. I think that generally, in terms of the songs that I love like like that idea when a song can get really specific and draw things to be really kind of I don't know, distill like an idea or an emotion or just an image, like someone in the shower talking through the shower screen glass, something that's like very specific, and then have a broader universal idea as well. And I don't know if that's you don't have that as your design, but I always like when songs give you a specific detail that kind of starts to create the picture and the atmosphere of the song. So I think generally I gravitate towards doing that in my own songs. And then the things that I guess I get inspired by hanging out with my friends and family, and especially spending so much time on the road. I feel like you can be filled with a bit of longing or loneliness, not in a bad way, in a way that kind of can can kick you into gear, and that makes you write songs about home, and allows you to reflect on your relationships with your family or your relationships with your friends, or reflect on previous relationships that like especially from a distance. And I think I spent three and a half years kind of living out of a suitcase, and I think that I had the distance to kind of just think about all those relationships in my life, and then start putting them into songs.
You, I should say, you recently tweeted about the last song on this record, which is beautifully titled, I think, for a final track. I love the title of this, "Where We Start."
Yeah.
Because sometimes when you're listening to your favorite artist's albums, you're kind of sad when you get to the last song, and "Where We Start" is it's a bright idea. You said it came about as a surprise, a bit of a surprise, and you wrote it in the city of Seattle. Can you kind of take us back to that time when you wrote that song right now?
Yeah, I went on a writing trip to Nashville for a week, and on the first night of my Nashville trip, my manager came to see me, and it was kind of one of those like he wants to talk and he wants to have like a conversation. It's like, how's the songwriting going? Like, have you got any songs? And I'm like, yeah, geez. And it's like it was one of those kind of stressful periods when I felt like I hadn't had the output that I wanted, and I was waiting for like a creative breakthrough and a creative release. So I did that Nashville trip. It was really fun, and then I went straight from there to a hotel room in Santa Monica, and I spent a day there before I traveled through to Seattle, and I wrote a couple of songs. I think I just had so much built up tension and like anxiety about not writing songs that finally a couple of songs kind of just broke out of me, and I wrote a couple of, largely most of a couple of songs in that hotel room in Santa Monica, which was exciting. And then I got to the studio the next day to record Call If You Need Me in it's a place called Bear Creek in Seattle, and I was playing this little weird banjo-y instrument that I bought in Nashville at a music shop. And the riff for that song I started playing it, and the melodies were just flowing really quickly. And even the idea of the song, like lyrics were just coming into my head, and like they're all connecting. And I love when that happens. It's like you're saying about having ideas and themes inside you, and then somehow they all make connections without you being too conscious of them. And then it kind of, the song kind of reveals itself as it's happening. And that happened with that song, and I had most of the song written, and then I went back to Melbourne, and I was showing it to my mum, and the line "Where We Start," she contributed that line. I was playing it to her, and she's like, "Take me down to where we start," and I like that idea. I'm not even sure what that even means. Like, to be completely honest, it just feels right. Like, it feels like down to where we start. Like, there's some deeper understanding or deeper level of love or foundational love that we all begin from, or something. And I think that's what I feel like that lyric "Where We Start" means.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to take it back for just a second to Riptide.
Yeah.
And I was having another discussion with a different artist, Billy Corgan of the Smashing Pumpkins. You ever listen to Pumpkins?
Yeah, I love him.
So
legendary.
I asked him, what song are you proudest of? And he knew where I was going with it. And he said, people ask me this from time to time, and people think I'm gonna say, these massive hits, these timeless hits, whether it's Tonight for that band or 1979. And he said, but it's none of those things, because when you write a song that gets that massive, like you did with Riptide, by the way. And for anyone here that doesn't really know the historic nature of Riptide, I mean, that spent a record 120 weeks on the Australian charts, longer than any other song. Here in the States, it was the #1 most played song on alternative radio that year. So just like unimaginably huge song for Riptide. And he said, Billy said of his own music and his own massive hits, when you write a hit that big, there's a point in that song's journey, in that song's story, where it's no longer your song. It's it's their song. It's the world song. It begins to soundtrack. It begins to mean, soundtrack people's lives and mean that as opposed to what it initially meant when you first, as a songwriter, put pen to paper.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, what is your relationship now with Riptide? For better and for worse.
Yeah, I can relate to that for sure. I think those songs that have that quality where they connect with people so broadly, and it's like they grow wings and just they take on a life of their own. It's just weird because you think, oh, I wrote that song. Like when you're playing it, you're like, I'm not playing a cover of someone else's song. It's like, this is my song, but it's funny. There is a gap between that first moment of writing it, especially with, I think, some songs like that, when there is a special quality to them, they happen like, it's like you're on a radio and you dial in the right frequency and it's like, and then you're just like, whoa, that's weird. Like, that's surprising. And then you write it and you're like, I can take credit, I guess, a little bit, but it was like I was channeling something. And I think, so I guess songwriters who have a number of songs that are like that, they talk about that, like getting out of their own way and like, being on the right frequency, and it's kind of like an act of magic or something. Yeah. So I think in that way as well, it's like from the start, you're like, I can take credit for this, and this is mine, but it's also not mine from the very start because you're like, oh, this was like a little gift. Like I was in the right place at the right time to just catch this song. So yeah.
It's magic.
Magic for sure. I think so. And there can be little degrees of magic like that happen in different parts of songs. Some songs are just like one blob of magic, and then some songs are like little moments of being like, oh, I surprised myself just with that little one word or that one chord move or melody line. So yeah, it's there.
Definitely. Now, off of Riptide, of course, a woman named Taylor Swift took a liking to the song, took you out on the road.
Yeah.
You opened for Taylor, of course. Taylor actually just announced yesterday she's about to head out on the road again for Reputation. She announced she's going to be taking Camila Cabello and Charlie XCX out on tour. Yeah. I'm curious, they're big fans of the show, by the way, Charlie and Camila. They watch Build like every day. So if they're watching right now, what words of advice would you give them for kind of just entering that crazy world of an international tour with Taylor?
I think they'll be pretty good. Actually, when I saw that, I looked on Taylor Swift's story last night, and she announced those people, and I was like, geez, that'll be a fun tour. Like, just absolute banger central. So, I think, my advice is just like, it's super fun, and it's like, it's long, and it's like being on a big fun summer camp. But I think that they're already kind of quite established, and I think that they'll probably know what to expect, and I think they'll just slay it. Like, I think it's going to be just very receptive audience, so it's perfect.
Definitely. Now, speaking of tour, like we got to get to you. You have like 1 million tours this year, a little less than 1 million, but you are setting out on the road, as you alluded to at the top of our discussion. Pretty soon.
Yes.
And it's kind of throughout the entire year. You're doing your own tour. You're going international. You're also playing all the big festivals, Coachella. So where's your mind at with that?
Right now, it's like I've got a flight at 6:30. We're going to London, and I think
casually.
So just like back my bag up. It's always a struggle to fit everything in that bag, and then go to London and have a couple of days to chill, and then we start about a month tour, and then come back to America. I'm looking forward to coming back. I like it here, and I have friends here, so I feel like coming back. We've got a few days in LA, catch up with some friends, and then Coachella is like the 15th of April, so I think that'll be fun. Yeah. It's always the thing that everyone, you just get excited about that festival because everyone else gets excited and they're like, oh, you're playing Coachella, and you're like, yeah, I'm also playing like a bunch of other ones, but this one is like the most important in the world. This is the cool one.
That's the one with all the filters,
It's the one with all the filters, so more filters, yes. So that'll be fun. And so I'm looking forward to that. And then just a year of sharing my music, and I'm going to be down for that whole journey, and I think it's going to be good. And then see what happens next. Hopefully, start writing some songs as well, like while I'm on the road.
Are you already thinking about writing new music?
There's not much in there. I think the well is pretty tapped out, but there's some really horrible voice memos on my phone, which I don't think. Like I listen back to, I'm like, well, like I'm so far away from that even being something like. So that's at least I feel the relief of knowing that I was able to write 13 more songs for this album, and that's good. It's like, cool, I can do that. I can do it again. And, I can take that as evidence that I can keep writing songs, even if, you start with very little and you start with just a line of, a line like a lyric or just a couple of chords. You can just, over time, like for a few years, you can kind of compile all those ideas and it will become something. So that's a nice kind of idea that I kind of have in the back of my mind as well about future music.
Yeah, definitely. A question I always like to ask international artists, is there like a venue or a city or a place when you tour America that reminds you of home?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Good questions, Kevin. I appreciate it. It's like it's something that I think about sometimes, especially when I'm in San Francisco, because we played Outside Lands and they've got eucalyptus trees, which are like, do you guys know eucalyptus trees? Yeah, I think, yeah, they're everywhere in Australia, and I guess that smell of that leaf is just so nostalgic for me and reminds me of Australia. And so when I smell that, especially when we were in that park at Outside Lands, I like see these big eucalyptus trees, and I'm like, and someone's looking at me and they're like, who's this guy?
Is Vance okay?
Is he all right? But yeah, I love that. I love that. Just those little things like that. Even just like something about that climate, and it's kind of not that hot. It's kind of like it's sunny, but in Melbourne, it's kind of not. It's not like as hot as LA and as consistent as LA. Yeah. So there's something about that part of the world and that part of California that reminds me of home. And anytime and there's eucalyptus trees on the way to the airport here. So every time I see those, it's like I'm like, cool.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned smell. You know, what I mean, it's that to me is like what elicits the most, or I should say, the strongest notion of nostalgia. You know, it can bring you back to like a moment. We do have all these fans here who did brave the elements. If you can see at home,
thank you guys.
It is like a hurricane outside. Let's get to a few of the studio audience questions. First one right here.
Hi, Vance.
Hey.
Is any movies or books inspire your music?
Yes. I'm trying to think of a specific movie. I know that. Books-wise, I've gotten inspiration from a couple of Raymond Carver short stories, because he just writes beautiful, very, what would you say, like, just beautiful stories that have like a really strong sense of setting and atmosphere. And sometimes when I'm writing songs, a couple of times I've kind of gone into that atmosphere or that setting in that short story and kind of written from that place. And then a story I read called Between Them by Richard Ford, which is like a book he dedicated to his parents' marriage and kind of their life before he was born. And then films, I'm trying to think of a good film. Oh, you know, have you seen that film? And I guess it has some cliched moments, but great performances. It's called Scent of a Woman. And I'm only saying that just in case.
Really into smells.
Yeah, Scent of a Woman. And Al Pacino's character's like... well, just it's a great movie. And he does a great speech at the end, which he kind of like does a big Al Pacino yelling speech, and it's really inspiring. So I got a couple of lines from that film as well.
That's a great question too, because Nation of Two. That's a nod to Vonnegut, right?
Yeah, that's a Kurt Vonnegut quote. Yeah.
Right on. Cool.
So
keeping with the literature theme.
Yeah, totally. I think I didn't realize that I had. I didn't realize that I was actually kind of plagiarizing him until I looked up online. I was like, Nation of Two. That's cool. It was on my phone, and then I saw the quote from him in it, and he's the man. I love some of his quotes.
Yeah, definitely. We have time for a few more, so let's get to the second one right here.
So
I'm sorry.
Hey, sorry.
I'm following the mic.
So obviously all the songs are really good, but I was wondering if like when you were creating them, if there were any that were like more difficult to make than others.
Yeah, song-wise?
Yeah.
Yeah, trying to think. The song Lay It On Me took a long time to come together. I had that guitar riff in like 2012, and when I played it, I was like, wow, that feels good. Like, that feels like a cool riff. I love playing it, and I get like excited to play it. And then I tried writing songs with it for a couple of years, and I had so many voice memos of attempts, and it never worked. And so I went into a songwriting session with a guy called Dave Bassett in Malibu, and he was like, "Oh, you got any like stuff?" And I was kind of like, "Oh, I don't know, like there's this thing," and I started playing that riff. He's like, "That's cool," and I was like, "I don't know, like," but I think by that point I'd given up, and he sang a melody that ended up being the verse melody, and then I combined it with an idea that I had for a chorus, and within like 2 hours we kind of had the song written and kind of demoed, and I was like, oh, what a relief. And then I got off the plane, I was going from there to the Catskills to record a couple of songs, and I got off that plane and I got the email from Dave just with the demos, and he'd kind of worked them and started and made them kind of sound a bit more like the finished product, and I was like walking down the concourse to the baggage claim, and I was like, yes, felt good, and I was like so excited, and I sent it straight to my managers, because at that point I was like, I need like a few more songs, and songs that I feel really excited about. So that was a hard one to crack.
Our next studio audience question right up front.
Hi, I'm a big fan of your work, and
Thank you.
I was just wondering, on your most recent album, which song is most meaningful to you, and what inspired that song?
Yeah, thank you. I think that I'm proud of a lot of them, all of them, and some that have an emotional I guess extra emotional power for me is a song called "Little Boy," which is a song about when I was a little guy. I was driving around on my bike, my push bike, in my local area, and I fell off went over the handlebars and knocked myself out, and I chipped my tooth. And a lady came by and took me home, and I went to hospital, and it was fun. I never really write from a very directly, or at least word for word, a memory. But this song kind of came out like it was just like dictating a memory. And when I was writing, I was like, wow, can that be done? Like usually I draw a few different ideas and have like lines from other people, or a bit about me, but a bit things from other places. But this song was very directly biographical, and yeah. And then I got the little bit of that story that I like to tell is just that I had to go to the dentist because I chipped my front tooth in half. And they gave me a cap over the tooth, but they gave me like a fully massive adult-sized cap. So I had like this massive tooth. It's still bigger than my other front tooth. And this is like, I'm like 30 now. So like when I was like a little guy, it was like I had like a big chomper, and it just reflects light in a weird way. It kind of glows when I go, like if I'm in a place with like kind of like disco lights, like especially like first year out of school, high school, and everyone was going to like clubs and stuff, I would have like the glowing tooth. So I think to some degree, it made things probably harder for me to make a good first impression. But also, yeah, it's just funny. Like I didn't put that in the song because that little detail is kind of, you want to make it universal enough to like people put themselves in, and everyone can be like, oh, I fell off my bike, I fell off the monkey bars, but not everyone can be like, and then I got a giant tooth and it glue in the dark. Like, so I cut the story off at a certain point. Yeah.
Glowing tooth. We need a song called The Glowing Tooth.
Yes.
We have time for just one more studio audience question. It'll come from right over here.
I just wanted to know if you ever like look at your horoscope, and if you do you ever like find that it inspires any of your music or like relates to your daily life?
I like to look at it sometimes. I know my mum does. And
What's your sign?
I'm a Sagittarius. And I guess sometimes when I'm like, say if you meet someone you think is pretty cool, you'd be like, what star sign are you? And you'd be like, what's that compatibility? Star sign compatibility. And it's like 0%. You're like, I don't believe that. but when it confirms that you like someone, you're like, I very much am into that. So I don't read it religiously, but when I do it, it's usually with my mum at home, and it's like over breakfast or something. And I think she's probably finding more in it to get up and go with her day, because she's a school teacher, and sometimes it's hard to like get up and like face those kids. So she's like, what have I got? She's like, you will face adversity. You will overcome adversity today. And mum's like, oh, okay. So yeah, I think it's good if you're looking for that little bit of inspiration.
All right, great question. Vance, that's all the time we have, unfortunately, but thank you so much for braving the elements here in New York and stopping by.
My pleasure.
Again, the album Nation of Two available everywhere, and you can catch Vance out on the road really from now until the end of time. So
yes,
for dates and tickets, you can head over to Vance's socials. Thanks for watching, guys.
Thank you.